Hi, I'm just going live here on Instagram because I tried to record a video on Zoom and I stupidly hit the audio delete microphone, so I recorded an entire video. So I just said, forget it, I'll just go on Instagram and just do a live here because I feel like it. So today's edition that I thought I'd is long overdue. And bear with me here because I have some stuff in front of me. So basically, this is a place where you can see what to watch. If you're looking for things to watch, that's what I'm here for because, but of course that depends on what your tastes are. And my tastes are, I like a lot of 1930s, 1940s comedies, 1950s comedies, 1960s as well, for musicals as well. Also, by the way, if you hear background noise soon, just ignore it. But today's edition will be the more recent 1980s to as recent as 2019. I'm having to go back and go over a lot of movies that I watched in the last 2 months. So bear with me here. But a way that you can find out what I'm watching and then, see if you like any of the movies and you can watch them yourself is to go to my link tree if you're here on Instagram, or eventually I'm going to post this to YouTube. If you're on YouTube, you can follow me there at Cinematic Enthuse. But on my link tree, which is at my link in bio, it's called lank.tr, www.lanktr.ee/cinematic enthuse. And that has a document called Movie Links. Just click on that and it brings up a Google Doc, and there's tons of movies on there and they're all in free places. So you can just find whatever movie you want there. So let me go over what I watched. This goes back as far as June. So I watched a lot of movies and I haven't been watching them a lot lately. So I have to kind of go back a couple months and some of these I'm going to read you reviews that I wrote on Letterboxd. So if you're a Letterboxd user, somebody who logs all your films or likes to review your own films, feel free to follow me at Cinematic Enthuse, and I might follow you back. You never know. Okay, so today's edition is more recent, 1970s to 2000s. The next edition that I do, I really would like to do one right after this of the classic era. So if you're more into the classic era, 1930s, 1940s, 50s, 60s, I'll do a video soon about that too. So because that's really my main focus, but I like to do these more recent movies too. Recent meaning 50 years ago. Okay, so I'm going to go through these as quickly as possible, and then if I get tired, I'll stop. Who's Harry Crumb? 1989, John Candy. Really great comedy. I had never seen this one before, ever. So I was really glad to find this because I think I just missed it when it came out in the theater. And if you like mystery movies that are kind of old school, like Clue or something like that, I think you'll like this one because it's a little goofy with the Pink Panther kind of the bungling detective, which I love. I love that kind of thing. It's not a trope for me. I really enjoy that. So if you're the kind of person who's bored by those things, you probably won't like it. And you probably won't like my recommendations. So, just want to let that out right now. But if you love these things, if you love being entertained, if you love old school comedy, if you love fun, fun comedies or musicals or things like that, these will all be up your alley. Okay, so totally watch that. It's really good, really fun. 1989, and I've got it on the Movie Links doc. All of these will be available on the aforementioned document that I mentioned. Okay, Black Sheep and Tommy Boy. Black Sheep is a Chris Farley film with David Spade from 1996, and Tommy Boy, as you remember, is also from 1995. building off the Tommy Boy was such a huge hit that they obviously decided to get back together again. But the reason why Black Sheep was, what, is, because I almost said it, is, and it's not terrible. There's moments of it that are quite good, actually. But it's just not as solid as Tommy Boy. Tommy Boy is just a classic. You can watch it over and over and over, and it just holds up. But as I found out, I had to look it up on, on various articles, but Penelope Spheris, who is a great director and directed Wayne's World, for example, apparently, according to a couple articles, she loved Chris Farley and his humor, but she really did not like David Spade, and not as a person, but just she didn't get his humor. And so she separated the two of them on set, which totally doesn't make sense, because if you watch Tommy Boy, all the magic that happened because of, of them being live together. They work as a team, like a live, comedy team. So if you separate them, the magic is gone. So, of course, the film's not going to go over that well. And it didn't. So, there you have it. But, it's got a couple interesting... The Gary Busey scene is pretty funny. So, and there's another scene at the Rock the Vote. You'll know what I'm talking about. Okay, because I don't want to ruin it for you. Tommy Boy, totally watch that. And it's on the Pluto TV app, so you can watch it, for free there. And again, Black Sheep is also on YouTube. I've got these links on that doc I told you about in my link tree. Revenge of the Pink Panther was great to see again. 1978 was the year. And it was with, of course, Peter Sellers, but also the wonderful Christopher Plummer, who, when I think of Christopher Plummer films, this is one of them. I really like this film. There's another great film, to get off on a tangent, that isn't quite goofy. It's actually kind of serious, but it's really quite good, and you should watch it if you haven't, called Beginnings, and that was more recently done. Of course, every movie he was in Knives Out, and I finally got around to watching that, and that was quite good, too. But getting back to this list, you should totally watch Revenge of the Pink Panther if you haven't. And actually, I have, the link for that is at Internet Archive, so it's free. And that's on the document, too. The Ratings Game from 1984 is on YouTube. It's one of these HBO TV movies. I don't know. I can't really say I would recommend it. It's kind of like for a specific audience. Like I was interested in it because I like Danny DeVito from the 80s. I think he's really funny. So if you like him, and I also thought it was an interesting topic because it was about TV ratings, and it looked like it was kind of, a ridiculous, kind of like a surreal kind of, ridiculous comedy. It was okay. I'm not sure I'd recommend it, but if you're into that sort of thing, give it a try. School of Rock, I watch it every once in a while. It's from 2003, Jack Black. For anyone who's ever taught in schools or privately, whether it's music or anything else, it's a great movie. Of course, if you're into rock and roll and the history of rock and roll, it's also a great movie because the history of rock and roll, especially from the late 60s and 70s and into the 80s. And so that's really fun, and even a little bit 90s in there. And Jack Black is just like the one-man show, but those kids are very talented, amazing kids. And I think they hired them mostly for their music talent, that most of them were they had some kind of background in music already. They were hired for that. So yeah, always a favorite. That's on YouTube. Waiting for Guffman is on the Tubi app, or at least it was at the time of this recording. A lot of these movies I watched back in June, and I'm recording this in August, so it's been a busy summer. But Waiting for Guffman is definitely one of my favorite 90s comedies of all time. My favorite of that Troops comedies. They went on to do Best in Show with Christopher Guest and Michael McKean and Harry Shearer, and The Mighty Wind and all that stuff like that. But I love that movie. That's on the Tubi app. You should totally watch that movie. Dodgeball, another favorite that I watch every, I don't know, couple of years. 2004, I think it's my favorite Ben Stiller movie. Yeah, totally. It's the hair. It's got to be the hair. I think it's my favorite Jason Bateman movie. It's a tie for Gary Cole because he's so brilliant in Office Space. So I'd say it's probably my second favorite Gary Cole movie. So yeah. Murder by Death, another favorite that I had to rewatch at the time, 1976. That's got, it's a Neil Simon movie. So yes, it's got the, typical racism and, yellow face, unfortunately. But there's lots of really great performances in it. There's David Niven and Maggie Smith, and they're wonderful. They kind of play that Nick and Nora. I think they call them Dick and Dora. And then I really like watching it for Alec Guinness and Nancy Walker. Nancy Walker is the deaf-mute maid, and Alec Guinness is the blind butler. And watching the two of them kind of communicate with each other. And I think the only reason we can say that it's funny is because okay, I'm going to spoiler alert it, but you end up finding out that neither one of them is handicapped. So it's like, I don't think anyone's feelings get hurt. So, Return of the Pink Panther. I already talked about that. Oh no, I didn't. Return of the Pink Panther is 1975, and that's before Revenge of the Pink Panther. So I think all of the 70s Pink Panther ones are quite good, and of course he ended up going back and making them because I think for money. I think he was supposed to, Peter Sellers didn't want to make any after like Shot in the Dark maybe. And then he just ended up like, and I'm really glad he did, because when I was a kid, those movies were like everything to me. They were just as big as like Star Wars and some of the other movies that came out. So for a kid watching Peter Sellers, it was just, as in Inspector Clouseau, it was just awesome. Lucky Lady, 1975. This was one, unfortunately, I fell asleep. And I really didn't want to, because Stanley Donen is one of my favorite directors, and I had high hopes because it's Liza Minnelli and I like her. I just couldn't get into it. So, maybe you'll like it. The Tourist from 2010 is, you might remember that one, Angelina Jolie and Johnny Depp. The reason I watched this is I wanted an on-location kind of spy comedy thing. And this one's filmed in Italy, on location, in the Mediterranean. Absolutely gorgeous cinematography. Two really awesome actors playing kind of different characters for them. Johnny Depp doesn't usually play like a spy, type. Sorry, another spoiler alert for you. But we already know she's a spy, so it's worth watching. Midsummer Night's Sex Comedy is a classic Woody Allen, but I watched it for Jose Ferrer, who is, I'll mention him again later on. It's from 1982, and absolutely gorgeous cinematography. It's filmed in, like, I don't know if it's upstate New York, but it's not New York City. It's definitely in the country. And I don't think it's upstate, but it might be on the east side of the state. But it's very much in the country. Some of the cinematography is absolutely breathtaking. You'll get to see all sorts of, forest scenery, and it's just beautiful. And it's very funny. It's kind of a period piece, so it's like, I want to say early 20th century. So definitely that time of, like, during the suffragette movement. Foul Play, 1978, one of my favorites. Always makes me smile. Goldie Hawn, Chevy Chase, Burgess Meredith is so wonderful in it too, with the pet snake. I just love that movie. And if you like your Hitchcock, you'll totally want to watch Foul Play. Or if you just like Goldie Hawn and Chevy Chase. Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, 1988. I just wanted to go back and watch it again because I hadn't seen it in a while. Still holds up. Michael Caine is wonderful. I like Steve Martin a lot in movies, but Michael Caine is just amazing. Really great character actor. And Glenn Headley, I think her name, Headley, she's quite good. Airplane, another classic. I watch it like probably 2 or 3 times a year. I don't even know what to say about it. But I was just happy to find it in the archives, at Internet Archive. So, I would definitely watch it while it's there. Never Been Kissed, I was in the mood for a newspaper comedy, and even though this has got some weird kind of like, teacher-student relationship creepiness to it, it's Drew Barrymore, and I liked her back in the 90s, and I thought she was kind of fun back then. Now she's weird, and I don't like her anymore. But it was fun, and plus Gary Marshall is in it. Gary Marshall, who was in Soap Dish, and he also, I think, produced... I don't think he directed Happy Days, but I think he produced it. So, I mean, he's like a legend. And of course, you know who else is great in it, in Never Been Kissed, is John C. Reilly. He's wonderful. And Molly Shannon's great. Very funny. Desperately Seeking Susan, I love to watch every once in a while because it's a slice of life from 1985 New York. I was in New York in 1990. Yeah, 1990. So I didn't quite see the 80s, although there was a little bit of that scene left. But the 90s were definitely similar because I ended up going back to New York City in like 2011 or 2012. No, 2011, and it was completely different. I mean, completely different. So when you watch Desperately Seeking Susan, it's definitely got that, like, you feel like you're in real time in the 80s in New York, and of course, it's just a very realistic, raw kind of, the movie may not be realistic, but the characters seem realistic. And for me, for a comedy, I think that's really unusual because I tend to like the comedies that are kind of unrealistic, but anyway, they're all very likable. Aidan Quinn is very likable, and Rosanna Arquette, and of course Madonna is, I think that's her greatest performance, probably because it's her. Straight Talk is from 1992 with Dolly Parton, and I think this is a fun movie too because it's it's another kind of entrepreneurial kind of movie where she tries to overcome the system basically and get out of a difficult situation and go into a job that she doesn't really know much about, but she kind of overcomes people with like her just being herself. So if you like Dolly, and what's not to like? So I'm not really a huge James Woods fan, so I still enjoyed it. So Brewster's Millions, believe it or not, from 1985, I've never seen the entire movie. So I watched it all the way through, and I loved it. It was so great. Richard Pryor and John Candy together, just, you can't beat it. And of course, it's a total, moral kind of, one of these kind of morality play type things about what would you do if you had $1 million and you had to spend it, in a certain, I think it's in 30 days or something. And how would you handle that? I mean, it's just one of those kind of situations where, human nature comes out, for better or worse. Tapeheads, also from 1988. I discovered this movie, or rediscovered it, about, 2 years ago. And I love this movie. I don't know why. I go back and watch it every once in a while. It's with John Cusack and Tim Robbins. And the two of them, again, another entrepreneurial movie. It's kind of ridiculous because they have some knowledge of, Tim Robbins, his character has knowledge of video production, but Cusack plays this total kind of con man type, and it's just really funny. They get in over their heads, and that's enough said. You should just totally watch. But the hilarious parts of it are when they actually are making the actual videos. You'll get to see some, they make some music videos in particular, which if you know anything about music videos or have seen any from that era, from the late 80s, you will laugh so hard because they are very accurate. in their ridiculousness. Okay, Dragnet from 1987. That's still as funny as it was back then. A little bit kind of campy. If you like camp, I do. I love Tom Hanks from the 80s movies. And, Dan Aykroyd plays like kind of by the book, just the facts. And Christopher Plummer, another really interesting character for him, playing a evangelical pastor who, well, I won't tell you anything else. But so he really gives some street cred to that movie. So The Fifth Musketeer. Now, I would like to read to you my review of this, because I have a couple reviews that I'd like to read. Because what I did was, I tend to, if I have time, review movies on Letterboxd as, pretty much within a day or two of watching them, so I can remember. So that way, I watched this on June 4th. That was like over 2 months ago, so I wouldn't have remembered much about it. But this is a film, The Fifth Musketeers from 1979. This is a film I really wanted to rate higher, but what got in the way was Beau Bridges. Before I tell you the things I liked about the movie, I'll say this. I had a higher opinion of Beau's acting until I saw this movie. But there are some good reasons to watch The Fifth Musketeer from 1979. And that is a beautiful on-location in Austria cinematography by award-winning Jack Cardiff. And when you go to my Letterboxd account, if you decide to do that, you'll see that I have certain lists, and some of the lists are organized by cinematography that I like. Certain people, Gabriel Figueroa, Jack Cardiff, Greg Toland, of course, and there's a couple more, I can't think of who they are. But yes, this is really good cinematography. Jose Ferrer, who I mentioned before, he's the reason I wanted to watch The Fifth Musketeer in the first place. And also, if you like Ian McShane, you'll get to see him as a very young man playing Fouquet, which is the character name. But he's quite good. Ian McShane is a great actor, But it's neat seeing him as a younger man. This is pre-Lovejoy period. And really good sword fighting. So if you're a fan of, another one of my lists on Letterboxd is good swashbuckling movies. And of course I have some classics of Errol Flynn on there. But I would put this in that category. It's pretty good sword fighting. And a lot of that is because there's a lot of old classic actors in it. Like Lloyd Bridges is in it with his son, Beau. I think, is it Cornell? I can't remember his name. Some of you who know noir will know who I'm talking about, Cornell. And then Jose Ferrer, who of course obviously knows how to do sword fighting because of Cyrano de Bergerac. And there might be one more guy, and I can't think of who it is, who's a classic, old Hollywood classic actor. The cons are, I think the director was wrong for this movie. The dialogue scenes were really boring. Not enough screen time for the Three Musketeers. I mean, come on. Everybody goes to see the Three Musketeers. That's the whole point of watching a Musketeer movie. So I don't understand why the movie had to be about the Beau Bridges character, and not even interesting parts about him. I think they just miscast this guy, because Beau Bridges did a lot of great movies after that. So maybe he's just too young. However, what he did excel at was the physical side of the character. He was a really good sword fighter, really good swashbuckler. So, there you go. Okay, so I also saw 10 Things I Hate About You, because that's one of my favorites and I like to watch it. 1999 is the year it came out. You should totally watch it. It's on YouTube. I think I posted it here. When in Rome is an interesting movie if you're looking for on location Italy movies, Mediterranean. I just remembered I want to watch that movie because I remember there was magic fountains in it. And so if that appeals to you, and of course it's a rom-com, but Kristen Bell is really good in it. I think it's a nice role for her. So she does good with comedy. So I would watch it again. Okay, a movie I would not watch again was The Hustle from 2019, and let me give you my review because it's short and it'll explain why I only gave it 1.5 stars, which even if a movie is not that great, I'll give it 2 stars. But I was so mad after watching, I didn't even finish it, and I'll tell you why. I didn't finish watching The Hustle from 2019 and had to read the rest of the plot online. Why? Because Anne Hathaway's accent was driving me nuts. I thought Rebel Wilson, who I like, was very funny, but Anne was not right for the Michael Caine, David Niven part. And I didn't know this until I read the plotline, but this is a remake of Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, which is a remake of the David Niven movie, and I can't remember the name of the David Niven, which I would like to watch sometime, and I'll probably review it on here. But here was my suggestion. They should have cast Emily Blunt, who you remember from like Devil Wears Prada. She would have been great in this role, and I'm sure they could have cast her in it, and it would have been great because she could have totally carried off that kind of character, that kind of like upscale, refined character, because she played it in Prada. So, but I wrote at the end, I said it's really disappointing, as I really wanted to like a female driven remake, because there just aren't as many of them, so swing and a miss big time. It's just harder to like see something fail when you really want it to win. So okay, The Wedding Date from 2005 still holds up. Another great movie if you want to go to England, and especially in the countryside, because there's a nice wedding in it, and it's a lot of British actors, so if you like British comedy, you'll see some familiar faces. And Dermot Mulroney, to be honest, it's like one of my favorite Dermot Mulroney films. Deborah Messing, I don't think has been in a lot of movies, but I loved her in this movie. I thought she was great. And they have really great chemistry, so you should totally watch it. And it's on the Tubi app. A lot of these are either on Tubi, YouTube, maybe Pluto TV or Peacock. Yes, I'll occasionally have some on the OK.ru site, which, your computer may or may not be compatible with that, so enter at your own risk. But usually if you don't log in, you'll be fine. You just click on the link, watch the movie, don't log in. Club Paradise, 1986, also on Tubi, completely free. I like this because of the SCTV people in it. Like Eugene Levy's in it. Why can't I remember his name? Rick, you know who I'm talking about from SCTV. Those two guys are very funny in it. And of course, Stephen Campman's in it. But the big star is Robin Williams, who, is okay in this movie. Jimmy Cliff, if you like Jimmy Cliff's music, he's really great. And Peter O'Toole. I just love Peter O'Toole in almost anything. So it's a fun movie. The first half is better than the second. So, if you get a little bored in the second half, I'll totally understand why. Back to School, 1986, another very funny movie. A really good, pump you up kind of movie. It gets you motivated. Some of the other movies I mentioned that might motivate you are like Dodgeball. That's an underdog story, so it gets you motivated. I'll be mentioning some more like entrepreneurial type or kind of like, encouraging movies. Tapeheads has kind of got an entrepreneurial spin to it, so that it's definitely motivating. And there was one more in here that I thought was kind of like, had that kind of vibe, but I don't see it now. Okay, so I just talked about Back to School. Okay, just a couple more. Oh, I wanted to mention Dave from 1993. This is a Kevin Kline movie, and I'm just going to see if I can find... Here we go. I hadn't seen this film in almost 30 years, so a lot of it was kind of new to me again. What I remembered was, I thought it was a little more lighthearted than it was, but that's probably because I was younger when I saw it. The United States was a lot different 30 years ago, but anyway, this is one of those films where the orchestral score is a little bit over the top. The guy from Toto, James Newton Howard, composed the score. But I recommend seeing Dave again if you haven't seen it in a while, because it's a really hopeful and wonderful character played by Kevin Kline. The character Dave really speaks for the people, and tries to do good things for everyday working people. So in 93, if you look back in history in the US, there was the savings and loan scandal had happened maybe 3 or 4 years before that. So that's why they used the savings and loan scandal as kind of a way to ruin certain politicians in this particular movie, in Dave. It made me remember that, scandal appears in cycles. It hasn't gone away. It's just called something else. And it's kind of always been there in the underbelly of our, political system, unfortunately. But from an acting perspective, I remembered Kevin Kline had done a lot of movies where he played either like an unlikable character or a lovable criminal type, or just an obnoxious, funny character, which I think he's so good at that, Fish Called Wanda or Soap Dish. These are some of my favorite 90s comedies, or late 80s, early 90s. But Dave is one of the few movies from the 90s that Kevin Kline made where he gets to play a nice guy, just an everyday nice guy. And it's really great to watch this because he totally pulls it off. And I can't really think of a lot of other movies where he played this kind of character. So there's also a lot of really great supporting actors like Frank Langella, who's always awesome, Sigourney Weaver, Charles Grodin, Laura Linney, Kevin Dunn, Ving Rhames, and a lot of cameos from, especially from that time period. Even the great John McLaughlin from the John McLaughlin Report, who you'll remember was very popular at the time. So totally recommend that. 3.5 stars. Outrageous Fortune, 1987. Excellent, fun, female buddy flick. It's got action in it. Obviously it's a comedy. It's Bette Midler and Shelley Long. And George Carlin, I think maybe a year before Bill and Ted, because I think Bill and Ted came out in 88. Yeah. So this was before Bill and Ted. So a lot of fun. I really like this movie. And you get to kind of travel across country. A lot of the locations are across the country. Okay, Airheads. I think I'm going to end here with, this is an edition from, the 70s through 2019. The next time I do this will definitely be on classic era stuff from the 1930s to 1970s. So if this goes well with the live and I don't have any problems with the audio aspect of it, I'll do another one of these. So stay tuned. Okay, so Airheads. I want to end with this. Airheads is from 1994, and you might remember it with Brendan Fraser, Steve Buscemi, and Adam Sandler, and a bunch of other people who are really great. So I'm going to read you my review here, and I didn't realize until the viewing of Airheads that it falls into that category of one of the few movies that exposes the insides of the music industry while it was happening in 1994. Sure, the plot, and here's a spoiler alert, so if you don't know anything about the movie, it's really about 3 guys who are desperate to get their record demo played on the key radio station in their area. And in that desperation, they end up taking hostages, which, obviously is not a good idea. The rest of the story is basically about that plot line, but I'm more impressed with a lot of the conversations that happen between the 3 band members, played by these guys. And also the radio station director, played by Michael McKean, and the DJ is played by Joe Mantegna. So one conversation in particular is really stunning in nailing the problem of why new bands don't get heard. And I think this is true in 2024 too. So why new bands don't get heard, and why the music industry and the corporations that run the music industry basically have ruined rock and roll as we know it now. So here's my basic recollection of the scene, and it's between Steve Buscemi and Michael McKean. So Steve Buscemi says, hey, there's a lot of great CDs here from some really great bands. Why don't you ever play them on the air? And Michael McKean is the radio station director, and he says, if they're so great, then why don't they ever make the charts, babe? And Steve Buscemi says, because you never play them, babe. So that kind of sums it up, right? Maybe it's because I've been watching a lot of Rick Beato YouTubes, and if you're interested in music industry stuff, you should totally watch his stuff. Because he talks about the way the music industry has failed rock and roll over the last 20 years or so. But I'm also a person who listened to a lot of FM radio in the late 70s and 80s and 90s, and then watched the decline of quality radio programming, especially in the early 90s. And actually, I should say, it really took a tank like in the early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s, because Clear Channel bought up all the, independent radio stations. So this resonates with me a lot. But Airheads could definitely be put in a category of uncovering the seedy underbelly of the music industry and understanding why we listeners don't really get to experience the talented musicians that are truly out there via the music industry, at least as we know it right now. So this has been a 1970 to 2019 edition of comedies, and I didn't have any musicals in this one. But just to let you know what's coming on the next one, normally I record these on YouTube, and I just post them. But this is my first live on Cinematic Enthuse, so I might do another live one. I'm not sure. But the next video will have Singing in the Rain, provided I don't have a sore throat. And other favorites. There'll be lots of stuff from the 1930s, 1940s. A couple British films in there. I think I also have one or two, at least one drama in there. Some musicals. There'll be some duds and there'll be some classics. So before I have too many more frogs, I'm going to sign off and hope you have a wonderful weekend, and talk to you soon.